The first one up that we have is Jake Johnson. And, you know, a lot of you guys know Jake Johnson, right? He's the brother of Max, and he's basically followed Max wherever Max has ended up. You know, they started out at what was it, LSU first, and then they made their way to Texas A&M, and then they made their way to UNC. But Trevor, I'm going to kick it to you first. Tell us a little bit about Jake Johnson, and give us a little bit of history about Jake Johnson, why we should be maybe excited about, you know, his potential in this room, and then we're going to kick it to Troy for a little bit further in-depth knowledge there about Jake Johnson.
Yeah, man. So I just want to say as a whole, what you've said about the wide receiver to running back room, it kind of is the same thing with his tight end room, right? It's a lot of potential in the room, but not a lot of production, right? And this is where you were talking about bringing in Belichick, Lombardi, bringing in those high-ranked recruits, big-time recruits, and trying to squeeze more out of them and turn it into, you know, what they were meant to be. That's exactly what this tight end room is. And Jake, man, he's followed Max everywhere he's been, you know. So he was committed to LSU. I don't think he actually made it to LSU, but he ended up going to A&M when Max transferred, and now he's here at Carolina. And last year he couldn't stay healthy for us, right? But he's a guy. He's your prototypical tight end, man. He's 6'6", 240, highly recruited guy. I want to say he was the number one tight end.
That's correct.
Coming out of high school at his class, big time offers, you know, from every top tier SEC program wanted him, right? Comes from a family where not only his brother is Max, his dad, Brad, former Super Bowl MVP. His uncle is Mark Richt, former coach at Miami, Georgia, ACC network guy. So, I mean, he's lived and breathed football his whole life, but he's a dude that he's got all the tools, man. And if he can just stay healthy for us, with the way that Belichick, we've seen throughout his whole coaching career, tight ends are often used a lot on every Belichick team. I know Freddie Kitchens, the OC, but somehow Belichick always makes sure he uses his tight ends. And if Jake can stay healthy for us this year, he's got a big chance to bring a lot to the table. And I mean, coming out, like I said, he was projected NFL guy. You'll see that's, I believe, did Max throw that to him?
Yeah,
that's a touchdown for Max.
Brother connection right there at Texas A&M.
Yep, looks like that's against Auburn. So I mean, when he was healthy at A&M, I've got his stats here. It was like 23 catches, 235 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, so he's got some SEC experience and he's played some high level ball. It's just a matter, can he stay on the field and be what he was meant to be? Which, if I'm a tight end and I've got his resume and his, you know, I don't want nobody else to coach me but Belichick. And Freddie Kitchens, he knows what he's doing with tight ends. So I think that hopefully Jake will take a big step forward this year and be that number one guy in the room.
Yeah, and I've also heard, you know, there's been some discussions about, you know, his size, right? You know, you can go back and read some of those recruiting blogs, you know, back when he was committing, and the major concern there was putting on size, that he needed to put on size, even though he had all the tools, you know, under his belt to be, you know, a world-class tight end at the college level. He needed to put on size. Do you think, you know, it's no secret, Belichick, right? They've left no stone unturned at Carolina, right? A new nutrition staff, a new strength and conditioning staff. Do you think that's something that we can expect from Jake Johnson this year, to come in potentially with some more?
I mean, we've saw what they've posted, man. I don't know the exact numbers, but in terms of like fat and muscle, and I mean, we've got Moses Cabrera. He's New England Patriots 7 years. I don't think there's no better room in the country, so we should see it. Whether we do or not, you know, is a question mark. And I think you've got to you can have it in front of you, but is the player going to take advantage of it? So I think if they soak it in and work, then yeah, we should.
Troy, when we turn on, you know, Jake's tape, right? Like, I know that you've gone back, right, and looked at his high school tape, and you know, taking a look at, you know, the very limited tape that there is out there for him on college. You know, what type of player do you see?
I definitely see a player that with an increased role could be a very big difference maker for Carolina this year. Trevor touched on it, during his segment there. Just being able to stay healthy. I know last year I think he only appeared in 2 games. But you look back at his college career, year before he got to Carolina at Texas A&M. I think he caught 24 passes for 235 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I'm willing to bet that most of those probably came in the red zone. So definitely a guy that I think with an increased role, and kind of a game plan around him and what he could be used for, is it definitely has a ton of upside. A bigger body. I think he's like 6'5", 240. He's got great hands. But there's just not a lot out there on him right now just to really know exactly what you're going to get coming into this season. But I do think, with this Carolina group this tight end group as a whole for this season, Carolina fans, like you touched on, Chris, have been very, very blessed. We've been super blessed to have some great production, and some NFL guys come through our program at the tight end position, all the way back to the Algie Crumpler days. And Eric Ebron and the career that he had. And, just even from a college standpoint, Kamari Morales was a guy that produced at a pretty high level for Carolina. I think he caught the first touchdown pass of the season 2 years ago against Florida A&M, if I'm not mistaken. But then you look at guys like John Copenhaver and Bryson Nesbitt, who have been featured players in our offense the last 3 to 4 years. I want to say last year, Bryson was injured a lot. 24 catches, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. Definitely not a season that we're used to seeing from him. But Copenhaver stepped up big time, Mr. Do-It-All. Trevor knows how much I'm a big John Copenhaver fan. 40 catches, 414 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. But, the total between those two guys, man, 64 catches, 678 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I mean, that's a pretty good production clip from 2 guys in that tight end room. So I think this year, for this season, Carolina fans are going to have to kind of ease into, the tight end production. Because while we do have guys that have some college experience, there's also a lot of youth there. But what I do like about this tight end room, and we'll touch on this, is there's a lot of bodies. We have been so used to just having 2 or 3, main guys that are featured in our offense. But this year, I think we've got, the guys that we're touching on tonight, we got like 4 or 5 that could come in and get solid rotation, solid burn, and make the most of the opportunity. So while I am, somewhat like you, Chris, concerned about the tight end room this season, I do think that the ceiling for this group is pretty high, and just anxious to see how they come out and what kind of role that they have and how they're used. We know Belichick and his tight ends, like Trevor said. I mean, Gronkowski. You can throw out names, at the tight end position in the NFL, but he's probably the best to ever do it at that position. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes this year, but definitely a group to keep your eyes on, and Tar Heel fans, be a little bit patient with them. It might take us a little bit to get their footing up underneath them. So super, super anxious to see how this group does.
Hey, 3 of the 4 we'll talk about are SEC guys. So there's a lot more depth in the
room. Don't get no bigger ball than that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, and talking about like the last episode where we broke down the wide receivers, I talked about the type of different transfers, right, that Belichick has and Lombardi have gone after through the transfer portal. And this is a perfect example of kind of what I touched on, and Trevor just mentioned it a little bit, is that, a lot of these transfers, and definitely in this wide receiver room as we go through it, not all of them, but quite a few of them were some of the top, if not the top tight end in their class overall in the nation or in their state. And for whatever reason, they were not able to, what I like to say, flip that switch on at their previous school. And so, Belichick's been known for his development. over the course of his years in the NFL, and the ability to find gems, right? And Lombardi was definitely a part of that in New England. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see as we move through tonight's list, which ones are going to be able to turn it on and which ones are not. And that brings us to our next
crew. Thanks for tuning in today. You just heard a clip from a recent episode where we broke down one of the key position groups. If this episode hit the mark, do us a favor, like it, drop a comment, and share it with a friend. That kind of support keeps the podcast rolling. You can catch full episodes of the Tar Pit Podcast on Spotify and YouTube. Don't forget to follow and subscribe today. The Tar Pit Podcast is proudly powered by Untapped Sports Network. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Heels.